What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JohnnyVTV Live. As always, I'm JohnnyVTV. We are down a man tonight, our old faithful, Nick Durst. But don't worry, we still got the Twitterless Kyle Donnelly. Kyle, what's good, kid? How we doing?
How we doing, John? How's it been for you lately?
It's good. It's getting busy though, man.
Yeah, you're telling me, dude.
Yeah,
work has killed me, dog. Mixing cement for a foundation, for a block, for a house. Oh god,
it's the worst, man.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
Backbreaking.
Yes, for sure.
As they say, bro, the show must go on. So we're in for a treat
Nick,
tonight.
we got you, bro.
We got Nick.
We got him.
We have a very good guest tonight from Sporting News. JohnnyVTV welcomes Mr. Joe Rivera, content producer. How are we doing today, sir?
Gentlemen, I'm doing fine. How are you guys doing?
Joe, great to have you with us, man.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, I'm not mixing cement out there, Kyle, but I think we're all busy the same, right?
That's right. Yeah, I guess it is. I get home and then I'm shot, Joe, as you can imagine, and I don't even get up from my bed.
In my former life, I worked at a warehouse.
So you know what it's like.
You know
what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was distributing. It was one of these like grocery delivery companies, and 8 hours a day I was loading trucks, man. Brutal. So no, I get it.
And then and then an hour commute each way, maybe.
Oh yeah, I mean, actually, we're lucky because it was like 15 minutes from my place, but then they actually moved.
Lucky.
Yeah, they moved up to Jersey Turnpike, but then I was like, I'm out. Sorry.
Yeah,
don't pay me enough to stack 50-pound boxes for 8 hours a day. But
Kyle can't say the same for us. But Joe, we have nice work from home, remote jobs. Your Honor, no objections.
Boy, I need it. No objections whatsoever. Need it.
So, boys, we got a lot to get into. First off, let's start with the association. The NBA Finals. Can the Bucks even it up at 2 apiece? Joe, what do you think?
So I think they can because they have former Knicks great Bobby Portis, right? I mean, that's how it works. But really, I think the Bucks are always at their best when three things happen: when Giannis plays down low and he's really dominating, playing bully ball; when Brook Lopez is actually stretching the floor and can hit the three; and when they play, and when Chris Middleton plays down the stretch and he plays well. So if you get those three things, I have no doubt that the Bucks can even the series of two. I still think that they could win it all. A lot of it depends on how good Devin Booker is going to be too on the other side, because he hasn't been great since he's had his nose broken. So it's been a fun series. I think it's going to continue to be a fun series. But if the Bucks can get those three things to work, they're definitely going to even the series of two.
Yeah, I might have to disagree with you there a little bit, Joe, just simply because I love what the Suns are doing. They have a loaded team top to bottom. I mean, it starts and ends with Chris Paul. But then, you got Devin Booker and then DeAndre Ayton and then Josh Jackson and then who's their fourth?
Michael Bridges. You got Michael Bridges in there.
Thank you.
Cam Johnson in there.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty deep team, man. I mean they go what about 9-10 deep?
Yeah, I mean they're
rotation.
They're definitely a good team. I mean I don't want to discredit the Suns at all because they've obviously been very good. And the thing that makes Chris Paul so special is that you usually get these athletes, right, where you hear when they get up there in age, when they get really the wheels on, they get the wear on their wheels, and they say, "Man, if only I had the knowledge when I was younger and the experience I had now." But Chris Paul is kind of like the best of both worlds right now, right? Because he's always been a very smart basketball player, and he still can play at an extremely high level. And when he's out on the floor, he's like another coach. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to discount the Suns at all. I like what the Bucks do a little bit better. And like I said, if Devin Booker can't get it going moving forward, if he can't, he's shooting under 40% from the floor, they can't have that. This was supposed to be his breakout series. So there's still hope for the Suns. There's plenty of games left, but I think the Bucks might be able to at least even the series tomorrow.
But do you like them going forward as a favorite?
I don't want to keep rehashing the same point, but for me, it's really depends on Devin Booker. And, in sports, you never want to boil it down to one guy, right? Because that's not usually how it works. But
it's a team
in basketball, Right, but in basketball, it's always going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more amplified because these teams, it's just 5 guys on the floor, right? And if your star doesn't play well, then you're in deep trouble. So, you hope Devin Booker can turn it around. Maybe he's in his own head right now. Monty Williams benched him the other night. He didn't take him back off the bench. I think he had 1 shot from the floor in the fourth quarter. I want to say maybe, but. If he can get it going, if he can turn it on like he did in the first 2 rounds of this postseason and even parts against the Clippers, I think that they can definitely go all the way. I mean, he's absolutely explosive when he gets hot. So a lot of it falls on his shoulders, but I just don't see anybody really matching up with what Giannis can do. And if Middleton's one of these guys who can really close out a game, so it really depends. But I moving forward, I still give the Bucks a slight edge over the Suns.
So it's interesting. Hearing both of your points and just kind of watching the series, Devin Booker was on fire. Like, he couldn't miss. It was his world. We were just living in it the first 2 rounds. And like, he's come out, like you said, he got his nose broken. I don't care who you are, unless you're like Andrew Luck, who just loves to get hit. It's going to rattle most people's cages. Like, you get hit in the mouth, you get hit in the face. It kind of takes maybe a little bit of tenacity away, aggressiveness. And I think with him being benched and not coming back in the game, that might reignite the fire a little bit. He's like, all right, I've been way underperforming. I need to get back to being Devin Booker, get back to being the guy that's been just putting on a clinic in his first NBA postseason. And like you said, Chris Paul, he's been one of the most underrated basketball players for at least the last 10 years. He's an absolute floor general. He is like a quarterback, man. He's like Tom Brady. He sees everything before it happens. He knows where guys are supposed to be. He knows where the defense is supposed to be. And it's hard to get anything by him. He's a brilliant basketball mind. He's got very high IQ, but he's just still good enough to be able to go out there and execute physically. So now, of course, Devin Booker's got to be the guy that's really going to kick it into gear, but they're getting contributions everywhere else. And then if you flip it over to the Bucks, then I got to say, if Greek Freak plays his game, there's nobody stopping him. I mean, he's putting up 40 pieces now. It looks like he finally found his groove a little bit. So I think the Bucks are probably going to even it up tomorrow night. But then, honestly, the way it goes, man, I could see this going seven games in the series and the Suns closing it out. I just think, Chris Middleton, as great as he's looked at times, I think the supporting cast, I might give the edge to Phoenix just because we know what Devin Booker can do. We know what Chris Paul can do. The way Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, you got all these guys and a great head coach in Monty Williams. But, it's not surprising to see the Bucks come and win this series. I mean, they were the favorite coming in, but I just think the Suns, when they get hot, man, it's tough to defend them as a team. It really is, especially behind the star power with multiple guys.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. And to your point about Chris Paul, I mean, what does this guy do in the NBA? Every team he's ever been with, all he does is make everybody better. He turns them into winners. That's it. And he plays well. That's it. That's all he's ever done. So it's weird to see a guy, and I understand he might not be the razzle-dazzle flashy player that some of these other guys are, but when you have a guy like that on your team and all he does is make everybody better, and like I said, he's like another coach on the floor, that's valuable. That's valuable, especially to a championship-winning team.
Johnny said it best, man. Chris Paul is the most underrated basketball player out there right now. Easily within the last 5 years, definitely with arguably 10.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. It's because when you look at his draft class and when you look at, again, he's not the flashiest guy, but he can score and he can handle and he can still direct the team. And I understand we're in the age of point guards where like every point guard has to put up
it's a guard
25 points a night.
It's a guard-driven league, right?
Right. And I understand like that's, giving a guard or a point guard giving you 10 points, 15 assists or 10 points, 10 assists a night, just not good enough anymore, right? So it's a different era for sure, but he's still so insanely valuable. He really is, and he's always been. So it's great to see him at this point with the Suns, and hopefully he can at least push it to 7 games, and hopefully he can get his first ring.
Absolutely, man. That's also the biggest factor. I don't have a dog in the fight, but I want to see Chris Paul win, man. He's deserved it. He's had some bad losses. Nobody can win on the Clippers. The Clippers are cursed. They've they've gotten very deep in the playoffs numerous times, and they just cannot close it out. Chris Paul is well deserving of a ring. I think it's finally overdue. This guy, I think that's all he needs. He needs one to solidify him as one of the best NBA players to ever play. Because like you said, his tape doesn't jump off the screen. But if you watch basketball,
he's consistent.
Exactly. He's consistent. He makes everybody better. He does things that don't go in the box score. And people are so obsessed with stats in the box score, myself included. I love seeing a good.
It goes beyond the box there, Johnny.
Exactly. 100%. So that's why he's so deserving of it, man. And like you said, this is a point guard driven league, and he is not this Russell Westbrook that can have like a 47-inch vert and just pull off all these insane dunks and get these triple doubles left and right. It's just something to have to be admired. He's a very throwback player in the NBA in today's modern day.
No, wholeheartedly agreed. And the thing is, the knock against him for so long was always that he's a tough love player, right? That he shows guys tough love and he's just hard on his teammates. But when you see the result of it, like you're seeing with Phoenix now, when you see these teams win, I mean, why would you not want that in a player? I understand there's this whole societal thing, this cultural thing, maybe these guys are soft now and maybe they don't take coaching, and I get all that. That's fine. But all he does is help teams win. That's it. That's all he's ever done in his career.
Hey, Joe, there's another guy that, used to do that exact same thing. He was number 23 in Chicago. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No, and it's. I don't want to listen. I don't want to throw the Jordan Paul comparison, but you're right. I mean, the demeanor's the same.
Just
right?
The demeanor, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Not in the comparison of how good. Let's, yeah, right.
Yeah, right. I mean, you show up to practice, you play hard in practice, right? You demand the most out of your teammates. Those are qualities that they share, and there are very few players in the NBA I feel like legitimately do that now. You can make the argument about LeBron, but sometimes LeBron comes off a little more diva-ish than he does actual leader on the team, right? And we've seen that through the years. But I think Chris Paul is one of these guys that he just demands the most, and he always gets the most out of these guys.
Absolutely. So that being said, that's enough of NBA. Let's get to the MLB, the bread and butter of the summer. Mr. Joe Rivera. It's very close to that time in the MLB. The MLB trade deadline. Who is on the move? What have you heard? What are you thinking?
So I think when you look at the teams that are totally out of it right now, I mean, the Cubs, they can't put anything together, man. And when you look at any of these teams that are probably going to be sellers, they have the most enticing pieces, right? I mean, Anthony Rizzo, lefty first baseman, he's going to be a hot commodity. Chris Bryant, I mean, if this guy gets hot, he's one of the top 10 players in baseball, right? And we know that he's dealt with health issues in the past, and we know he's dealt all the drama that happened with the Cubs organization, where it feels like that marriage has just never been a steady one since the moment that he came up, when we know what we can expect, that he had his service time manipulated. So I think Chris Bryant's going to go. I really do. And I think if you're looking at a blockbuster this summer, I think he's going to be the guy to go. I think they have so many pieces where you can really jumpstart a rebuild and rebuild your farm system. And the cautionary tale, guys, I always look at is, I want to say it was the 2017 Royals, where they still had their core of Lorenzo Cain and Eric Hosmer and Alex Gordon. And they had these guys, and all of them were free agents at the end of the year. And they had an opportunity at the trade deadline to trade one or trade two and really get some prospects back. And it's like, obviously it sucks for fans because no fan wants to see their favorite players traded, but they had an opportunity to jumpstart their rebuild and maybe get competitive and pick up some good prospects, but they didn't. And they kept the band together, and they went for it again for, potentially at least a postseason berth, which I don't think they did not get that year, but they kept these guys together. They didn't trade anybody, didn't get anything in return. So when you look at the Cubs, a team that for so long was trying to build it, and then they win one championship, they mismanaged the window. I almost think that you have almost no choice but to kickstart this thing again and to trade some of these guys off.
No, absolutely. I mean, coming into the season, I thought the Cubs were going to be a disappointment. I mean, they got on an absolute heater, and they were, right up there in the division. And I was like, wow, I'm honestly surprised that this might turn around to them being buyers, because my biggest question mark with them coming into the year was they have no pitching. I don't believe in Jake Arrieta anymore. I don't even believe in him. Kyle Hendricks, I'm not a huge – he's a number 3 at absolute best. They don't have that number 1 ace that they had. Like Arrieta's was the ace for a time. He's not that guy anymore. So the pitching was the biggest question mark, and I was just waiting like everybody else. When are they going to sell the guys like Baez, Bryant? I feel like Rizzo they might have kept unless they got an absolute undeniable offer. But yeah, like for example, like a team like the Mets is being talked about as a buyer. I think they need to buy a little bit more. They're already so far into it, they might as well just completely go for it, completely sell out this season for it. You know, maybe you get Syndergaard back with enough time. Carrasco, he was throwing off flat ground last week, so maybe that could happen. But like you said, man, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, they're game changers. Those are guys that you insert in the lineup, and it makes you 10 times better. It doesn't matter how good you are. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see, because I feel like the Cubs are they could be a little bit hard-headed with how they deal with their players. Case in point, Chris Bryant when he first came up. But I do think at some point they're probably going to have to let it go, because if they're going to be, 11, 12 games back in the division, I don't know if there's a point in keeping these guys that you're probably going to end up losing anyway. So you might as well get something for them.
Right. And I think the one thing that's playing into the Cubs' favor, if they're thinking twice about it, is that I think it's Milwaukee's division to lose right now, but nobody else really jumps out at you, right? Like St. Louis make the big deal for Arenado and he's been good, but their seasons, they're around 2 games under 500 right now, so they haven't been all in right there. I thought Cincinnati was really going to take off and win that division. So we'll see. They're going to come after Milwaukee there, but yeah, like you said, John, it's so hard if you're the Cubs to try and figure out which guys you want to maybe keep and get rid of. I mean, Rizzo has been there through it all, right? He's seen 100 loss season. He's seen 100 win season. Bryant is a guy that he filed the grievance. It's tough. So yeah, I like Cincinnati. Cincinnati's good. It's tough, man. It's tough to see how it's really going to shake out the rest of the way.
No question about it, because unfortunately, I picked the Cardinals to win preseason. I still think they have a shot. My biggest question mark with them was their pitching outside of Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty, when he's on, which for most of the season he has been on before his injury, he's one of the best. He's one of the best young pitchers in the game and one of the best in the NL, of course. But they didn't have much after that. And my feeling was, okay, they have the offense. The offense is going to be shored up, so they're fine there. So now they're going to have to go get an acquisition via pitcher. Maybe they'll get like a JT Brubacher. It's not a splash play, but he's a solid guy. I mean, yes, it's within the division, or even a Tyler Anderson. Just somebody to bolster that rotation. And, I mean, you got right now a top-notch closer in Alex Reyes, who is an all-star, and he's been one of the best this year. And, now what's supposed to be their bread and butter was their offense, and that hasn't played well. I mean, yes, they've had injuries, and they honestly had a brutal 17-game stretch. I was saying if there's one team in the MLB that needs the All-Star break, it was the St. Louis Cardinals. Luckily, they have it. And listen, they're, 9 games back in the division right now. I still think there's time to make up for it, because, no, I don't think Milwaukee's that good. I really don't. Their pitching 1-2 is maybe the best in baseball right now, and they have some good back-end pitchers with like an Adrian Hauser and Eric Lauers, but they don't impress me that much. So, and Cincinnati, their offense is unbelievable. It's so much fun to watch. Like I've said it till I'm blue in the face. I love Nick Castellanos. He's one of my favorite players in the league. He literally wakes up in the morning, he's already got 2 extra base hits. But same thing with them, man. Their pitching is no good. Their pitching, to me, Luis Castillo has been an absolute travesty. A couple of years ago, I was like, this guy's going to win a Cy Young in his career. And I still think there's a lot of time, obviously, to make up for it because he's young. But even if Castillo gets right, I mean, who are we really trusting? Sonny Gray? I mean, Tyler Mahle has been pretty good this year for the most part. But even still, I'm not sold on the Reds being there yet. So I thought they were going to be sellers as well, because you narrow it down who you're gonna have to face. There's going to be 2, maybe 3 teams from the NL West at this point. Whoever wins the East, because the Braves are probably going to fall off. The Phillies, I don't think many people believe in, and then one winner from the Central. So
it's probably going to be the Mets out there in the East.
I would imagine so, but like the Braves to me aren't going to get a wild card now that they lost to Cunha. The Phillies aren't there. Like I don't trust Philly. Like,
is Washington selling?
What do you think, Joe? I still think they should hang on at this point. I mean, in my opinion, like their roster's there. It really is. They just need to get a little bit more healthy once they get Strasburg in full swing. Their team, to me, is there, and then they're close enough to just get on a heater and at least get into playoff contention.
Yeah, I mean, Washington's a really a curious team, right? Because you've heard the stuff about, maybe you trade Scherzer. Like, do you entertain that at this point? And we heard his name brought up. It's tough. It's tough because you have to project the division in front of you too, right? It's not just about how good you can get. It's how good other teams are going to get. And the Mets haven't hit their stride yet. I still feel that way. I mean, listen, it's a lot of ifs, right? If Francisco Lindor can really turn it around in the second half and be a second half player, if they get Syndergaard back, if Taijuan Walker can continue his terrific first half, if Jacob deGrom is fully healthy, like it's so many ifs, right? But they weren't entirely healthy. Conforto's back. These guys are all back now. Maybe they make a trade to try and really nail down third base.
Like the Cespedes trade last year and go get Chris Bryant.
Right. Like you look at the Cespedes trade and what that did for them and pushing them all the way to the World Series, right? And you hope one of these guys like Cespedes put that team on his back. I mean, you're hoping whoever you trade for won't have to do that. It's more of like an addition to really supplement the lineup. But yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough if you're that NL East is like, sometimes you get these divisions in baseball where they just beat the crap out of each other, right? You look at the NL West. I think that's one of those divisions this year where every team's legitimately good and like everybody beats up on each other, and that's why you end up with a lot of 500 teams. And then you look at divisions where it's like that episode of Seinfeld when Costanza's on a scooter and he's going like 2 miles per hour, and then all the old people are chasing him on the scooters going like 2 miles per hour. And that's kind of what the NL East is this year. And I know a lot of it's been injury, and the Phillies bullpen's been a disaster. And how does that all work out? But if you're Washington, it's such a difficult spot to be in because you have to bank on winning the division, because there's going to be 2 teams that come out of the division winner, and then 2 teams that grab wild cards of the West. I would bet. So yeah, it's difficult. I don't think there's a very clear answer there.
Are the Yankees going to be buyers, or are they going to be sellers?
They're another one of these teams, man.
In limbo.
Yeah, it's Yankees have lots of serious problems, right? And it's the chicken's coming home to roost, because we've known for years that a team that relies exclusively on power, exclusively on hitting home runs to score runs, is bad news. Like, you're going to win games in the regular season because of it, because you're playing a lot of bad pitching, right? That's just the way your schedule works out. You're always going to play bad teams, but you get to October, and these guys pretty much every team in October has a decent to great pitching staff. It's way different. So what you're seeing now is the over-reliance on the home run and the lack of wanting to put the ball in play as part of their issue. Not only that, but they're not an athletic team. Defensively, they're terrible. Their bullpen, if Aroldis Chapman can't get right, is in major trouble too. And then if you're Brian Cashman and you took a couple lotto tickets on Corey Kluber, who obviously he pitched a no-hitter and then he got hurt, and Jameson Taillon, who's been, decent at best, but mostly not very good, it's just a poorly built team. So I don't see them being sellers outright, because I think you can do a few tinkers on this team in the offseason to really figure it out moving forward. But if they come out of the All-Star break and they have 8 games, and I want to say in their first 10 in the All-Star, coming out of the All-Star break against Boston, and if they go 2-6 in those games and they really put themselves out of it, it's, sound the alarm bells, man. Like, where do you go from there? How do you fix that? I don't think you can.
It's so funny because the Yankees. So my best friend's a Yankees fan. He religiously watches them.
And I'm a Red Sox fan myself, Joe.
And he said it all along. He's like, I can't stand Boone and Cashman. I don't like the Yankees, the way they're built, because these guys, all they rely on is analytics. I'm tired of teams trying to replicate Moneyball. Like, it doesn't work. They didn't win it either. Like, yes, you could go far, but at the end of the day, and even remember this, the A's during Moneyball era, they had a 3-headed monster in the rotation with Zito, Mulder, and Timmy Hudson. The Yankees obviously have Garrett Cole, who has not been right at all. He comes in. It was a great time for him to just throw a complete game shutout in Houston. That is the Garrett Cole that you want. That, to me, when he's fighting with Aaron Boone, that I'm staying in and finishing this game for 130 pitch count. That's what you want to see. Winners want the ball with the game on the line. So that was a great sight to see. But then they were on the verge of sweeping the Astros on Sunday, heading into the All-Star break on an absolute high. You're taking down arguably the best team in the AL, right? You're taking them down on a 3-game set, a complete sweep, get out the brooms. 7-2 in the bottom of the ninth. What happens? They let up 6 runs. How does that happen? Now you go from being six and a half back in the division to 8.5 back. That's a gigantic swing, not only in the standings, but momentum wise. Now they have to carry that with them for the All-Star break. And like you said, coming out of this break, they have a tough series with Boston, who, in my opinion, has overachieved because they've been getting a lot more from their pitching. Their hitting was never a question to me. But now what you're looking at is, like you said, if they drop 3 out of 4 and they lose their next series 2 out of 3, then it's gonna be very tough. Because I was saying, like a lot of people, they need a left-handed power bat. A guy like Schwarber would be perfect if they were selling, or if the Reds selling, Jesse Winker, guys like that would fit this ballpark and fit this team to a T. But as I've always said, and why I've never believed in the Yankees to win it all, it goes back over a decade. They don't have enough pitching. You need pitching in the postseason. Name me a team that's won the World Series that didn't have, at least, like you said, decent pitching. I mean, most of them had good pitching. Most of them. Like they've had an ace, and then they had their 2 and 3 be very good or good enough. The Yankees don't have that. Garrett Cole has not been himself. Like, yes, he had a great start against the Astros, but he's been pretty much off since this sticky stuff ban came out. Coincidence, maybe, whatever you want to name it. That's just the facts, man. And the Yankees, they need a big-time pitcher and a left-handed bat. So they're going to have to make some serious moves. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, honestly, if you can try and get something with the Reds, try and go get like Tyler Mahle and Jesse Winker if the Reds would sell.
The problem is the Reds aren't going to sell, John. They're in the mix.
They might not. Exactly. You're 100% right. I mean, the NL Central is anybody's division right now. Like I said, I'm not a big believer in the Brewers, but man, if the Reds get hot and the Brewers have a bad injury, knock wood, Cincinnati might surprise everybody and sneak in. So the Reds might not be traders now.
I'll tell you what now, John, this has just come up in my mind. Why not Anthony Rizzo to the Yankees? I mean, because you see that left-handed bat, first baseman?
Contract. It's probably going to be a tough working with the salary cap, no?
Or Jack Peterson, right? I mean, he's a guy that's he's only signed a $7 million contract for a year, and I want to say he has an mutual option for next year. So, and he's an outfielder, which the Yankees really need because Brett Gardner's really giving you nothing. Clint Frazier is really giving you not much either.
To be fair, I mean, Brett was only supposed to be a 4th outfielder this year, and now they're relying on him due to injury to be a 3rd outfielder.
Let's think about this, right? I mean, so Brett Gardner was re-signed to be potentially platoon outfielder in left field, right? As a lefty, 70% of your at-bats are going to come against right-handed pitching, which tells me that it was never really the plan to give Clint Frazier the keys in left field, which tells me, why didn't you try harder to get better outfield reinforcements this offseason? Listen, the Yankees have, and this is a very difficult conversation to have because they've been so successful for so long, right? But there's a reason that you're starting to hear more about Brian Cashman than Aaron Boone. And that's because these teams that he's built have relied so heavily on power and not being afraid to strike out for so long, right? And when you look at those 90s teams, they weren't built by Brian Cashman. Those 90s teams were built by Gene Michael and the core 4 and all that stuff.
And they were defense, contact, and pitching.
Exactly. And those are things that the Yankees don't have right now. They want to just bludgeon teams. And when it's going right, it's great, right? And you look at a lot of their success over the last couple of years too, has all been tied to DJ LeMahieu, right? Because he's the guy that makes more contact than anybody on the team. And you're seeing this year what happens when DJ LeMahieu's a 260 hitter, I want to say entering the break, all of a sudden, like, he's not that 320, 330 guy that you paid him all the money for. And he's your only contact guy. So listen, the Yankees have tons of problems, and it's not Boone. And I know a lot of people get on Boone, but
it's definitely not Boone. It's Cashman's team that he built.
Yeah, and the thing about Aaron Boone too is like everybody that says he's attached to the analytics, this is a guy that grew up. His dad was Bob Boone, manager. His brother played, he played. These guys talked about baseball 24/7. Like, there's probably no one in baseball right now managing that knows more about baseball and the fundamentals of baseball than Aaron Boone. I really believe that.
Maybe Joe Girardi.
Potentially, right. But like even if you go there, I mean, Girardi didn't have the demeanor that Boone did. So, I mean, listen, you could split hairs over personality, whatever, but at the end of the day, Boone is trying to navigate a mess that Cashman left him, and he has to play the guys the way that Cashman intended them to be played. And if Aaron Boone could snap his fingers and say, "Listen, we're going to be a small ball team. We're going to hit," that's not their game. That's not what these guys are built to do. Do you see Giancarlo Stanton can't play the outfield, and you want him to drop down a bunt? Like, it's a mess. It's just what they've done, the way that they built this. It just hasn't been productive. I think we've seen this coming for years too, unfortunately, for Yankee fans.
Yeah, man, it's absolutely it's tough. It's tough. I mean, listen, there's a lot that can happen. I still, but they cannot go into this Boston series and drop 3 out of 4. They have to at bare minimum split. I mean, you'd like them to win 3 out of 4, but I mean, they just look overmatched. And if you just look at the way baseball is played, if you get a hit 3 out of 10 times, you're very good. You get a hit 4 out of 10, you're legendary. So the way the game of baseball is played as a failure, you can't just rely on that. It's not feasible. It's not sustainable. It's not realistic. Yes, they could get hot for 2-3 weeks, and they're killing teams 9-2 every game. You know what I'm saying? But like now, I don't know. But while we're still on the subject, are we in for a big splash trade before July 31st? Because the guy that keeps getting talked about, 2 of them, Joey Gallo, who was a disappointment last night in the All Star Game's home run derby, as well as Trevor Story, his opponent. So those 2 guys, are we going to get a big splash maybe from those 2 guys?
It's a good question. I think Gallo is probably going to go. Just the way that he was talking before the All Star Game, it sounded like, or just before the home run derby, it sounded like he was pretty resigned to the fact that he's probably on his way out. And he was saying things along the line. I want to say one quote was he wanted to wear the Rangers jersey for the home run derby because he knows this is probably going to be the last and only opportunity he gets to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gallo goes, and he's a guy, obviously, tons of natural power, can play the outfield, amazing arm in the outfield, can play third base in a pinch if you really needed to, or first base. I wouldn't be surprised if you stick him there. Trevor Story is the interesting one, right? Because he's an elite defender, all-world defender, one of the best in baseball. He's a very good bat too, but what's his market? What's really the market for shortstops right now? It's really tough to envision. I mean,
maybe the Mets.
Yeah,
They were talking about him. He's open to playing second base. So if you like I'm saying, if the Mets went to go sell out hard to go get somebody for this chip, like, in my opinion, I don't think Trevor Story is as good as everybody thinks. I think he's so overrated. If you look at his splits, he's so much better by far in Colorado. You take him on the road, he's nothing special. Yes, he's great defense. He could steal you bases if you need, and he's a solid hitter. That being
so you're
said,
saying he's a product of Coors Field.
He's a big product of Coors Field. He's still a good player, though. Don't get me wrong. He's still a good player. He's a good addition for anybody. If the Mets got him, I'd be very happy. Very happy, because you insert him in that lineup on the diamond at second base or shortstop if Lindor's not playing, whatever the case may be.
What about him at third?
Maybe move McNeil around. The Mets like to move some pieces around. So I would be ecstatic if the Mets sold out and got Trevor Story. I think the Rockies made a mistake by not selling him in the offseason when they were getting rid of Arenado, because they were not going to contend. But I'd be happy. I'm just saying I think Trevor Story is a little overrated. He's a big product of the field he plays in. The split stats for the most part of his career would suggest that. That being said, he's still a good player. And I think Story's probably definitely going to be on his way out, because Colorado is – are they going to pay him? I mean, there's so much money tied to, there would be so much money tied to Story and Arenado that they had to get rid of Arenado with his gigantic $260 million contract. And I think Story is going to be the same thing. It's just, I feel like if the Mets can somehow make it work. Steve Cohen's been great so far. He's been a breath of fresh air for Mets fans. So I think he'll be able to really maneuver this thing and go get a story if they really want it. And I got news for you. I think if the Mets want to hit their stride in the second half, which we both are in agreement that they have not even come close yet, starts with getting a guy like Story.
I think that does make a lot of sense. I think the question then for the Mets is, what do you give up to get them? Because their farm system is not really where it should be right now. Listen, to be fair, Colorado sold very low on Arenado. They essentially gave Arenado away to St. Louis, right? They didn't really get much in return. And then their GM resigns, and all of a sudden it's like, well, what happens? Does this new GM interim GM have the ability to make a franchise altering trade like this? That's always going to be the question. So yeah, if Story wants to slot into second base, it certainly gives the Mets a lot more to play with, right? It gives them a little bit more versatility. For me, it's tough because like guys like Dom Smith, he's already, I don't want to say he's a DH. You never want to label guys that, but like Dom Smith, Pete Alonso, these guys should be staring DH instead of first base. Really is the way it works. So, how many players do you need in a lineup? Like, can you keep that versatility while still giving guys the at-bats and the positions that they're comfortable with on game day?
No, 100%. It's definitely going to be a topic we're going to see. We kind of touched on it. I was just saying, are the Mets getting ready for a big second half run? What do you think? They haven't hit their stride yet, and we both agree that they're going to. And I think the Mets I have a gut feeling that they're going to make a move because they're leading the division.
It makes three of us, Johnny. I'm right there with you guys.
Yeah, again, it's so much of it depends on if Walker can continue his first half, right? And he's a guy that signed late. Not a lot of people expected a lot from him, right? Let's be honest. He had a very good year in Toronto, but there were still some question marks there, right? And the fact that this team's come together and Jacob deGrom even lobbied for him in the All Star game shows you how much he's meant to that team. So without Taijuan Walker, what do you really have? Stroman's been Stroman for the most part, to be fair, but Jacob deGrom needs to stay healthy. You hope he uses his All-Star break and he really gets 100%. You're just dealing with some nagging things there. But I do think that if the Mets can get hot, if a lot of it relies on Lindor, and if he can continue, he hit a grand slam just before the All-Star break, you hope that he can keep that momentum heading into the second half.
Absolutely, man. 100%. I think everybody's expecting big things from the Mets. Speaking of, we had a fellow Met represent last night at the Home Run Derby. #repeat. Pete Alonso defends his Home Run Derby crown. What a clinic this kid put on, and he was having fun doing it.
Guy didn't even break a sweat. It's crazy. And the way that he was dancing around out there. But listen,
and hits over 70 home runs too.
Right. It's absurd. And I want to say he actually already has the record for most home runs in Home Run Derby contest, 131 or something like that. So obviously some of that is the format, but this is what baseball needs, right? And I saw people complaining Shohei Ohtani shouldn't have went on last. That's nonsense, man, because not only do you keep viewers hooked until Ohtani actually has to hit, but you're introducing the casual fan to a Pete Alonso, to a Juan Soto, to a Joey Gallo, to all these guys that baseball needs people to see. And baseball needs more guys like Alonso who want to hit in the Home Run Derby. They want to play in the All-Star game. They want to be that game ambassador. Listen, you can't force Mike Trout to be someone he's not, right? He's a quiet guy by nature. He's a quiet guy. You can't force him to be that face of baseball like a Bryce Harper tried to be. But when you have guys like Alonso who are showing that they're willing to wear that armor, they're willing to put that on their shoulders, that's awesome. So I'm happy for him. I'm glad. Former Sporting News contributor Pete Alonso, by the way, who actually wrote a few columns when he was coming up in the Mets minor league system for Sporting News, which is pretty cool. But yeah, baseball needs guys like Pete, and I'm glad that he not only he put on a show, but he totally deserved it.
Absolutely, man, 100%. It was great to see. I actually picked Matt Olson for the value late. Pete Alonso went to plus 600. I thought it would be tough for him to run it back just because, it's hard to do something like that. I think Matt Olson got absolutely robbed. It was a travesty because Trey Mancini's last home run that gave him the one home run edge that ultimately let him defeat Matt Olson, that shouldn't have counted. It went after the buzzer. And, aside from the fact that Olson's pitching was terrible, like his pitching was awful. He lost a couple home runs to foul balls. But I did say that in a prior tweet, I was like, I could see Joey Gallo getting upset because Story's, the hometown guy. It's hard to see a hometown guy getting a first-round exit. And honestly, as much power as Joey Gallo has, he's arguably got the most power in the league. He's right up there, if not number one. He is a very inconsistent hitter. He always has been. He's either walk, home run, single, strikeout. That's it. His approach is not – it's not consistent. It never has been. He's already struck out 110 times. Yes, it doesn't always translate to the home run derby. He's a consistent 230, 240 hitter. So his approach –
he's the modern day Dave Kingman.
Yeah, so that was a thing. But in any case, it was great to see Pete Alonso run it back. Like, as a Mets fan, I mean, as just a baseball fan, watching him just pour on home run, just moonshot after moonshot, it was great to see. But so, Joe, I know you wanted to talk about this. This was said by Stephen A. Smith the other day about Shohei Ohtani, that he doesn't think it's good for the MLB to have him as the face, primarily because of the language barrier. He can't speak English. He's got to have an interpreter, and he doesn't think that would fit well in the game. You want your primary guy speaking English, which to me was incorrect. I mean, there's a reason why first take guys only talk baseball twice a year. Like, they don't know what they're talking about in baseball. And I don't really think it's a baseball thing. I mean, I think he was just incorrect. I don't think there's any facts behind it, because so many people are like, I've never heard Mike Trout speak once. You know what I mean? Like,
I think he's just ignorant on it. That's just
he is. It doesn't matter. So to me, there's no real facts or any type of validity to what he's saying. But I know you wanted to talk about it, so I'll open up the floor to you.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is, like, and this goes beyond what Stephen A. Smith said, is that this whole discussion about there being a face of baseball is nonsense, right? Because with how long baseball is, with how big of a sport baseball is, with 40-man rosters, how many players are legitimately good, there's more than enough room for more than one face of baseball, right? We all know that. So that's number one. Number two, I wrote about this, and it is just plain ignorance. It's just dumb. And I think part of our job in the media is to always hold people accountable, right? That's kind of what we're here for. And I don't want to sound self-important, and I don't want to sound like I know more than someone else or anything like that, or be arrogant or anything, but you can't say stuff like that, man. It's really that simple.
You're holier than that now.
Right. And the thing is, I understand what he was trying to say and coming at it from a business perspective, right? And saying, well, baseball would be bigger if he was an ambassador of the game and if he spoke English, which is already a flawed argument, because Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, Aaron Judge are four of baseball's biggest stars right now, right? And everybody knows who they are, but they're not these global stars that they maybe should be. And that's not an English problem. That's not an English-speaking problem. That's a Major League Baseball problem. That's what it comes down to. So it's incongruent. It's an argument that makes no sense. Ichiro for years was one of baseball's biggest stars, and he used an interpreter. He used a translator because he didn't want his message to be misconstrued. He wanted to speak in a language that was comfortable to him. And I think that as a member of the media, that's what I want. I don't want any room to try and figure out what somebody's saying. I don't want any room for interpretation or to me to infer something from what somebody's saying. So listen, at the end of the day, he did apologize for it. It was very cut and paste, and he apologized twice, which is fine. Jeff Pass and de-pantsed him on the show today, which was very, very welcome. That was good to see. But listen, it's Stephen A. He's made a ton of money in his career. He should just be more careful with the things that he says. I wrote about it. And it's just this whole argument. I can't believe that in 2021, we're still having these conversations, especially in a sport that's as diverse as baseball. We have so many Latin players, so many Asian players, so many players that come from so many different backgrounds. It's just not a conversation that we should be having anymore.
Well, even more to your point, Joe. I mean, how many Latin players have interpreters throughout Major League Baseball? And it's totally fine. It's not a problem.
Right.
It's just part of what it is. And I'll even go back to another Yankee that not Ichiro, but somebody who actually had been here longer. And thank you, Johnny. I see you pointing at me. Tanaka How about the guy who was probably arguably the most clutch pitcher for the Yankees within the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, right? In October when they'd be in those situations. Who was the guy who was always showing up? That guy always had an interpreter. What are we getting at here? What is the I don't even want to waste my time on it because like I just want to say this here real quick, Joe, is what we talked about pre-show is that Rachel Nichols, who was being recorded without her knowledge, got caught with some comments. I didn't even hear her. I just heard that she got into some hot water. So if she's being held accountable for her comments, she can't be on the jump because NBA players aren't going to want to interview with her because of her comments. Well, then what if baseball players don't want to interview or have anything to do with Stephen A. Smith because he's got something to say about interpreters being in baseball? And that goes not just Asian baseball players that are over here from Japan who need an interpreter, but like you said, Latin American players as well.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I said, I never want, as a writer, I never want to have to guess what somebody's saying. So if Shohei Ohtani is speaking through an interpreter and he says, exactly what he's thinking, I'm cool with it, man. What do I care? Listen, I went to Canada a few years ago and I went to Montreal and I couldn't speak a lick of French, right? And I felt like, I felt like an ass, but I don't think anybody there would tell me like, well, you need to speak our language here, young man. It's just dumb. It's a dumb argument to have, man. It's just, I thought we were past that in sports media, especially when you consider how many Latin players are in Major League Baseball. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. did a whole interview about Black Lives Matter movement with an interpreter. And that to me is something that I'm glad he did, because I don't want him speaking in a language he's not comfortable in, something as important as Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
And if you're Shohei Ohtani and you're like, well, and he just talks about baseball, right? That's 95% of what he talks about. But if I just want him to be comfortable in his language, that's all. And I can't believe that we're still having to talk about this now, but it's important that people are held accountable for things that they say.
For sure, man. For sure. Like I said, that's why they never talk baseball. I don't think they know anything about baseball anyway. But regardless, the one time he chooses to speak about baseball, this is what he comes up with. But keeping it a baseball theme, tonight we have the All Star game. Gentlemen, who do you have? The AL has won the last 7 contests. They are 45-43-2 overall. Very close. But the AL has had the NL's number for the last 7 straight years. Will the trend change tonight? Mr. Donnelly, what say you?
What say me, Mr. Johnny, is I say it's going to be the NL this year, getting a little closer with that record, getting within 1 game there, just because I think there's too much firepower simply on the NL side of the ball there. Look at the teams that we talked about in the NL West. You got the NL Central's got some good All-Stars too as well, and then the NL East. Even though we have really only got the Mets and why can't I think of it off the top of my head? Philly as the only 2 really contending teams, I guess you would say, because Philly's not really contending, but they're in the picture for the division. But there's also some really good talent throughout the NL in those bottom tier teams. And I just think there's just too much talent for the AL to deal with.
No, I completely agree. I'm actually going that way too. Listen, Tatis, Muncy, Arenado, Freeman, Castellanos, Winker, Realmuto, Reynolds, Frazier. That's your NL lineup. And you're starting off with Tatis and Muncy, Arenado. That's a 1 through 4. That's like a baseball. That's a nightmare, right? And listen, not to say that the AL isn't any worse off, but you have Ohtani leading off, Vlad Guerrero. It's so evenly matched, but you get to the bottom of the lineup: Sal Perez, Teoscar Hernandez, Cedric Mullins. I just don't. It's not as
you
deep
start to see some of the differences, yeah.
Right. It's not as deep as an American League lineup usually is, and I think some of that is obviously because Mike Trout's not playing. You had some of the Astros players pull out, so it's a little bit different. But you see that the NL is a little bit deeper this year.
You know what, man? I do think the NL is deeper. I definitely do, but I don't know, man. Something about the AL, they have
the number in that game.
They got the numbers. I think the AL's been hit a little bit harder with injuries. Like obviously the NL lost Buster Posey, who's having like a renaissance year, like throwback Posey used to. Acuna, obviously huge loss. Man, I don't know though. I'm a bet. Hold on.
Got to jump in real quick. I saw that Acuna news when I was on the craps tables this weekend. Man, that was just unfortunate.
You're real busy, huh?
Well, I had to go down for a groomsman weekend bachelor party. I had to do that.
No, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Had to do it.
You got to do it. You got to do it. No, I don't know.
I only had one night on the tables, by the way, and it was for 3 hours. So give me a break.
So I mean, listen, not for nothing. Like obviously, it's the All-Star game. It's so evenly matched. I do think the AL got hit a little bit harder with the injury bug. But to be honest, man, I think I'm going to go with the AL. I like the value a little bit more. They were close to even money earlier today on FanDuel. They were minus 102. I'm going to go against you guys. I'm going to go the AL just because, listen, man, Ohtani knows he underperformed last night. You know what I mean? I think Ohtani's going to stay in the whole game. Like they made it so when he's done pitching after inning 1 or 2, he's going to still be able to bat, right, and play. I think he will slide to the DH. But I got to tell you, man, I think Ohtani's going to come out. He's going to have a good game. I think Vladdy Jr. is going to be on full display. Not that the NL's not absolutely phenomenal, but don't sleep on the AL. You got the guys like your Boston Red Sox, Rafi Devers, Xander Bogaerts. I mean, they got some guys too, and like somebody like a Marcus Semien. So there's still a lot of – it's not as flashy as the NL, right? It's not as flashy except for like Shohei Ohtani and Guerrero. Like
but Boston can't carry everybody. Exactly.
But it's not as flashy, but I think the AL is going to end up pulling it out. I think it's going to be a very close game, something like, I don't know, 5-4, 6-5, like a 1-run game. The NL winning is not a surprise at all. I think the AL is going to dip back into the well one more time and get their 8th straight win. I don't know, man. Kevin Cash, right? He's the manager. That guy just knows how to win. He knows how to get the most out of his players. He continuously wins like 90 games every year with one of the least talented rosters, but he manages to just completely maximize every one of his guys. So I think he's going to do it tonight in the All-Star game as well.
He pushes all the right buttons.
He does. Exactly, man. He does. He just knows when it's time for guys to go in, where they got to go, what they got to do. And listen, the NL winning is far from a surprise, but we can't all agree. So somebody's got to pick the AL. I guess it's going to be me.
It's got to be you.
So as we're wrapping up the show here, Mr. Joe Rivera, you have your emerging player of the night. Please tell everybody who that is.
So I picked – that's a little surprising. I picked Whit Merrifield, Kansas City Royals infielder, outfielder. You know, so many times in baseball, it's about, like, obviously we've been talking about Shohei the last week, right? This entire All-Star weekend, that's all we've been talking about. And we always know the big stars and talking about the Astros, but the All-Star game is about representation, right? And in teams in years where these teams suck, like the Royals aren't very good this year, it's cool to see these guys still make it in. And I know Whit Merrifield was introduced as a replacement a couple days ago into the game, but cool, man. I'm cool with that. Like guys like Merrifield, Cedric Mullins. I mean, those are cool stories. You know, it gives, with how regionalized baseball is, and fan bases are still fervent, and they love their teams. It's nice to see those feel good stories every now and then. So I'm picking Whit. I love Whit. I think he's a throwback baseball player. He's a guy that really just kind of burst onto the scene after that wave of Royals guys really showed up, and he really carried the load through the lean years after those guys were all gone. So I got Whit tonight. He's my guy.
Fair enough. So what's everybody's final thoughts? Kyle, let's start with you. What's your final thoughts for tonight?
My final thoughts was I should have won more on the craps tables this weekend, and Conor McGregor, which I was watching as I was coming off those craps tables. Wow. Just wow. It's over. It's done. Sayonara for him. He's done. I'm saying he's done. That's just my opinion. It doesn't make it right, but I think he's done.
Joe, what about you?
My thoughts are that I really like Kyle's shirt. That's number one. Number two.
Yeah.
Number two, you know, it's baseball is going to be real wild this second half, man. I just got a feeling. I got a feeling it's going to be one of those years where, like, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it's like
September is just going to be insane.
Yeah, and I think when you look at how weak the American League is this year, really, and so many teams, so many players out there that could really change the balance of power in divisions and in races. I just got a feeling, man. I got a gut feeling, and it better be good because you might not get it next year with the collective bargaining agreement. So that's really what I'm looking forward to the rest of the way.
Yeah, man, I definitely agree with you there. I would say my final thoughts are, I don't want to keep driving it home, but Mets and Yankees, man, they better get it together. Neither of them have hit their stride. The Yankees, we've harped on it a lot. We were talking about it for a good part of this show that they need to make something happen. They need to go get a bat and a pitcher. I mean, I don't know if you're going to be able to fleece the Reds. The Reds always seem to have an auction sale every other year. Maybe the Indians. The Indians got some assets, and Aaron Savali. They always seem to love to trade their pieces for virtually nothing. But, dude, New York, wake up. The Mets are, yes, they're in first place, but they do not look like the team that was put together to contend for the World Series a la Steve Cohen. So, guys, let's step it up and let's put New York back on the map.
If I could just say, John, one quick thing about the Mets there. I think that they are, though, at least way better off than the Yankees are. I think they're the division winner, even still, given all their troubles. They just got to get healthy.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So, for everybody, thank you very much. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at _JohnnyVTV. Our boy Nick Durst at Nick_Durst is not here. And at Joe Rivera SN. Kyleless Twitterless Kyle. On Instagram, I'm at The Gambling Guinea. Nick's at Nick's Food and Stuff. And Kyle's at The Kyle Donnelly. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us. And we'll see you next week. Mr. Joe Rivera, thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.